Hi, my name is Riley Wilkins. I'm talking about my AA experience. So I went to the Veterans AA meeting at the Veterans Hospital here in Des Moines. All the attendees were men and spent some time in the military, Marines, or any other military personnel. Overall, the experience was awesome. The gentlemen welcomed us with open arms. We walked in and they were like, "Nurses?" We're like, "Yeah, that's us." So it was really cool for them to just welcome us in right away. We didn't really have to ask to be there. They wanted us there. One of the guys was actually on the Iowa nursing board. He's a part of one of the new programs where nurses who end up using drugs or having some type of addiction while at work, instead of getting their license taken away, they can go through a program. So he was kind of talking to us about that, and it's a new thing that the Board of Nurses of Iowa are doing. So I think that's super cool. He was awesome. So they were very open about their experience and their healing process throughout our time there at the Veterans AA meeting. Um, Before attending the group, I thought it would be like a lot more emotional in the way that they would like describe their experience. But for my personal experience, most of the guys have already gone through like their emotional processes and going through the steps of AA. Yes, it's still emotional because those feelings and what you did to others is still there, and to yourself and your own body is still prevalent, and they feel that every single day. But at the same time, I thought I would hear like war stories and like stuff more about like what triggered the alcohol use, but it was mostly just about like their emotional deficit and them hurting people and themselves and what they regretted most about being an alcoholic and the long-term effects it had on them, and how some have relapsed, some have had to go back through the process, but at the same time, a lot of them have learned so much through this experience of alcoholism, how it is a disease and how it is treatable and you can help yourself, but it will bring you back down. Like, it is something that you fall back on. It is something that is a security blanket, and that is something that they really focused on. But they really focused on also that the healing process of AA and all that AA has done for them to overcome their addiction. They really conquered their fears to do better for those that they have hurt. A big part of AA is the step where you apologize to those you've hurt. And a lot of them talked about those experiences, how hard it was, and how hard it was to admit you were wrong. And the fear of being sober while doing it was even more prevalent in the discussion. And I understand vulnerability, I feel like, especially for men, it's hard. It's hard to be full of yourself and to be one in front of not just yourself, but in front of the people you love and the people who don't see the sides of you that you see. I have struggled being vulnerable, but I'm also an emotional being. So sometimes I just like to be emotional by myself. But for these men, I understand that. But to conquer those fears, to talk to people that they've hurt, is the biggest step that everybody talks about and the scariest step that everybody talked about. And I applaud those men for overcoming those obstacles and becoming sober and improving themselves as well as their relationships, because that's such a big part of AA, is achieving that. The meeting, yeah, like I said, was emotional, but more towards the vulnerability side, conquering personal fears. Fear is so real, and it is frightening to conquer those, and I think it's awesome that those men have done the steps, that they continue the steps if they do relapse, and they will not let this disease define them, that they will be the person that they are throughout the disease, but also to conquer and be one with themselves and understand why it's occurring and how you're hurting other people. I think it made them more aware of those feelings, and I think that's awesome. This experience allowed me to see substance abuse addiction up close and the struggle to succeed in this step of sobriety. Something I noticed is that all of these men attempted and failed throughout their individual journey. It's never as easy as it seems. As much as you want to judge a book by its cover, it's not that easy. It's not like you flip a switch and you're fine. It's a disease. It's a process. You have to understand. You have to go through the interventions and find your own coping mechanisms and the behavior that has created this action. It's not as easy as it seems, and it never will be. They essentially gave into their craving to go numb. A lot of them, they forgot their feelings, which ultimately burned bridges in their lives. A lot of men in this circle also went through withdrawal. Many of them even brought themselves to the hospital. That was another big topic of discussion, is that a lot of them wanted to see the change because they saw how many bridges they burnt, that they thought this was an opportunity to start over, that they needed to get their lives back together. Although sometimes some people did it more than once. That's totally fine. Everybody has their own journey. But that was another big topic, is that they brought themselves to go through withdrawal in a hospital and then put themselves in a program in order to overcome their alcoholism. All of these men experienced multiple alcoholic episodes. I don't think there was one man who didn't go through it at least once, this process. At least twice, sorry. At least twice. It was never a one and done type situation for most of these guys, if not all. Multiple of them have been through this process multiple times. The greatest recovery tool utilized by all of these men is AA. To go to the meetings, to sacrifice your time to go talk to others and be vulnerable with others about your disease, and to actually get those emotional feelings out with strangers that actually become your friends, who get to know you and understand you more than the people around you maybe. So I think that's awesome. They created lifelong friendships. A lot of them, they hang out outside of AA. AA is not like just their hangout moment. It's outside of it. They found long-life friends who can actually relate to their addiction. And I think that's awesome. When it comes to identifying a priority problem for the client, so one specific gentleman just discussed how his drinking, in his own words, was the answer to all of his problems. As I said, all of these men were in the military at some time, and those experiences were traumatizing for them, and they all addressed that it wasn't easy to come back. It wasn't easy to make that transition, and the alcohol kind of made their problems go away. This man specifically went through so much trauma during his time in the service that he felt that it was his way to melt away the time. He hurt many people in his path towards alcoholism as his tool, as a remedy to go numb. It created an illness inside of him, both mentally and physically. Alcohol does not just ruin your mental stability, but also ruins your physical stability. And you think when you use alcohol as a tool to numb yourself that there's other mental struggles going on that need to be addressed. And he even said that himself. There was more to it than just the alcohol. But the alcohol was the warning sign that something was deeper, especially when it started hurting himself and people around him. The priority problem for this man was his lack of mental stability due to his trauma in the war. The nursing diagnosis I would give this man is ineffective coping. The man did not want to ask for help. He did not meet his basic needs. He was just drinking. You would do obscene things to get the alcohol. Hurting others around him. Abusing alcohol use, obviously, is a huge ineffective coping mechanism. And many other characteristics of his diagnosis. It was limitless, the list. And I would help this patient by discussing his trauma when he was ready. Assist the patient identifying and developing coping behaviors. The biggest thing is having multiple coping mechanisms in the community around you. And finding something that you're passionate about that can be your release. For me, it's working out, hanging out with my cats, maybe going out with my girlfriends, but everybody has their own way of dealing with things. And that is a big thing in conquering a disease such as alcoholism that is used as your coping mechanism. It is important that the patient also take the time to evaluate previous behaviors and understand them. That is a step in AA, actually, is evaluating the previous behaviors, why you did them, and confronting those that you hurt through those behaviors that you committed. And so AA in general is just, I always say treat AA. AA in general is just a great tool to actually break down why those behaviors are occurring. It doesn't just say come to AA and you'll be fine, you'll be cured. It is come to AA, understand your disease, understand yourself, and make yourself better through that process. So this experience will impact me and change the way I support as my nursing practice, because it made me realize that you never truly know what someone is going through. There was always a deeper message, a deeper reasoning as to why people choose the actions that they commit. It's not just easy peasy, this is why they did it, because they wanted to. There's always a reason why someone does the actions that they are, whether it is developmental, whether it is substance abuse, whether it is trauma. There's always a reason why people do the things they do. And that you should never judge a book by its cover. Those deep reasons have purpose. And understanding the purpose behind it and the teaching that you can make out of it is so important. There's always a deeper meaning to someone's actions, like I said, in addiction. Getting to know them and helping them understand is way more helpful than persecuting them. I learned that through the shelter. When I worked at the Yes Shelter, I feel like a lot of the staff kind of just talked down to the youth because they were there, because they did commit crimes and they did bad things, but it doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean that their circumstances are out of their hand and that's the person they're defined for the rest of their lives. These kids just wanted somebody to talk to. A lot of them are going through unhealthy circumstances that are out of their control. And the behaviors they do is sometimes the way they can gain control. So it's all about life experiences. Alcoholism is not just, sometimes it can be just something that overnight is a behavior you develop. But a lot of the times, these behaviors do stem from a reason and a background. It's just important to take time to listen and understand those and their backgrounds specifically. Otherwise, just a constant downward spiral. Nobody feels helped. Nobody feels heard and listened to. And it just creates more hurt than good. But overall, it was a great experience. I loved going to the AA meeting. It just created such an eye-opener, more understanding, and I respect all people going through AA and those affected by alcoholism and other diseases. It does not define anybody, and yeah, thank you.